The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
What I tell people about this process is it's a request for qualifications, scoring those proposals on a predetermined rubric, entering into a lease option to give the developer control of the site. The developer goes out and gets, engineering, design, off-takers, finance, and as you mentioned, the incentives from state and federal.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility, solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, Brownfield Solar. This is a homecoming episode for Tim Montague. I walked a closed landfill in Urbana back in 2016 with my buddy Scott Tess, who's my guest today. And that was the very first solar project I ever walked. So that project is now a lovely 5.3 megawatt community solar array, and there's an expansion in the works. Welcome to the show, Scott Tess, Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the City of Urbana.
Thank you, Tim. Good to be here.
This is wonderful. I'm really pumped to bring you onto the show. Scott, before we geek out on landfill solar, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get interested in sustainability, and how did you become such a great advocate for solar PV?
Yeah, thanks. I've been working for the City of Urbana in this role, more or less the same role, for 11 years now. My educational background is in environmental science and urban planning. I worked in Florida for about a decade doing a couple of different things, mostly in the environmental field, environmental protection in the public sector, and just wanted to expand my impact and get into bigger, broader issues with sustainability. And when I came to Urbana, one of the first things they put on my plate was, you now buy all of the electricity for all the residents in the city of Urbana. And that doesn't make any sense. You don't own a utility. I knew nothing about what some states call community choice aggregation, what we in Illinois call municipal electric aggregation. And all of a sudden I had all these kilowatt hours that were, on my responsibility. And that really kicked off my interest in converting as much of that as we can from old, dirty fossil fuels to new, clean, renewable energy.
Yeah, community choice aggregation. Many residents of Illinois don't realize that they are part of a program, probably, or could be part of a program. And it gives cities, collaborative buying power. You're bulk buying energy. And, here in Illinois, we have a deregulated market. There are over 70 energy suppliers. And so there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of variation. And it's kind of
we're primarily putting downward pressure on prices for consumers.
Yes.
But when we create that margin, that increment of savings, we're capturing some of that to buy renewable energy credits. And that's how we leverage our municipal electric aggregation program to support clean energy.
Yep. So let's talk about your role regarding sustainability. What are the major buckets that the city is looking at regarding sustainability and resilience?
Yeah, we spend a lot of our time on renewable energy development. Most of that is helping others, not city facilities, but helping others get into renewable energy. But we right when I came here and started getting active in renewable energy, it was clear we had this closed landfill and it's a liability for the most part. We're just mowing the lawn, fixing erosion, pumping leachate, monitoring wells, and there's acres upon acres that are not being used. And they're not on the tax rolls either because it's a city-owned landfill. Now, we have a couple of things that we're doing with the landfill for a long time: police firing range, fire department training range, and a landscape recycling center. And that's really excellent reuse of that space. But we still had 40, 50, 60 acres that we're just mowing the lawn. It's all a liability. And of course, coming from a renewable energy perspective, sustainability perspective, the first thing you think of is, well, let's just cover it with solar panels. But what's not quite that easy, we've got to sell that power to somebody. And in the before times, before the Future Energy Jobs Act in Illinois, our only opportunity would be to either be a power plant, and we weren't going to be big enough to be a cost-effective power plant, or directly plug into someone's building and provide electricity. Well, there wasn't really anybody nearby that was big enough and interested enough to take this amount of power that we could produce from a closed landfill. And so we were stuck for a couple of years, and that's when you and I started talking about this property and what we could do with it. But then the Future Energy Jobs Act comes in, and it creates the framework and the utility billing obligation for a community solar market, and that changed everything. Now we were monitoring the development of FEJA, Future Energy Jobs Act, and as soon as it was signed, we were writing our request for qualifications for a landfill solar developer. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like 2 months later, we had our RFQ published and we were soliciting vendors. And I think we were pretty early in terms of soliciting vendors and getting that project going. We might have been one of the first projects actually energized in the community solar program.
Yeah, it certainly pays to be proactive. If you're a city manager or sustainability officer listening to this episode and you have land that could be used for some other purpose and can't be developed into a higher use than renewable energy, you should look at solar. Landfill solar is a thing. Check out episode 199 with Annika Colston of AC Power. They are a developer that does nothing but brownfield solar, largely landfills, but all types of brownfields. And, you can think of a landfill as a bathtub in the ground that has a lining, and then you put a pile of trash in it, and then you cover it, and you grow grass or some low-growing ground cover on top of it. And that's what the landfill that I recall, I'm going to show a photo of the Solarize landfill. I couldn't find my photos of that day we walked around the landfill, but it's basically just a hill with grass. And in your case, you had some trees and shrubs growing on it that had to be cleared off, of course, to put the solar array on there. But it's a great repurposing of brownfields, because otherwise they're just sitting there. You have to do some maintenance. Maybe you're collecting landfill gas and converting that to energy, and that has a lifespan. I don't know what, maybe you know more about that than I do, but 20 years, 30 years. How long does landfill gas last?
I don't know the length, but I know that it produces most of the landfill gas early in its closure life and less over time. So by the time that was a thing happening at landfills, our landfill had been closed for decades. So we're not really capturing or producing any landfill gas.
Yeah.
But you make a great point. There's a lot of these properties that municipalities own out there, and they're not sure what to do with. I've talked to a lot of municipalities over the years, and what I hear is a lot of folks saying, well, what about this and what about that? I don't know everything. And what I always encourage them to do is use the procurement process that they already use in their town, village, city, county, to learn. So if you don't know how things proceed with a landfill solar development or any type of large solar development,
right,
ask that question in your request for proposal, in your request for qualifications, and get responses back from developers. And if after reading all those responses and getting those proposals, you're still not comfortable, You don't have to move forward with the procurement. You can cancel the procurement and reject all bids and spend a little more time investigating. But what's most important is to get moving on this process, to start your procurement. And of course, those of us like Urbana that have done this a few times, we've got the documents. It's all in the public domain. Just email us, we'll share it.
Yep, you do not have to reinvent the wheel in terms of developing a robust RFQ. And that's the good news, because those documents are very important, actually, in order to secure qualified bids and a process that is going to lead to a development. There are many RFPs I've seen that I can tell are not going to lead to a project because they're not written well enough, specific enough, etc. It's easy to have unrealistic expectations, Scott, about what you can do with solar on a vacant lot. And, it's not simple. Community solar in Illinois is great, but it is complicated. And the stars do have to align, right? You have to get through permitting and interconnection, and you have to win a REC award in order for these projects to pencil in the first place. You can't just willy-nilly go, oh, here's a field, let's fill it with solar, and we're done.
What I tell people, and I give some talks at some conferences, what I tell people about this process is it's a request for qualifications, scoring those proposals on a predetermined rubric, entering into a lease option to give the developer control of the site. The developer goes out and gets engineering, design, off-takers, finance, and as you mentioned, the incentives from state and federal. And here it's really the federal you get afterwards, but the state you need to get before you start the project. The developer puts those pieces together and comes back to you as the property owner and converts a lease option to a long-term lease. That's how we view this whole process.
Right. The developer is just leasing the land, and that's true for brownfield or greenfield solar, generally speaking. The developers just want to lease the land for 20, 25, 30 years and have the right to develop it. And, if the stars align and they win REC awards, interestingly enough, Scott, there is now a phenomenon of solar happening outside of the ABP or the Illinois Shines program, where developers are driving forward with construction on community scale renewable energy projects without RECs, but that's a minority of the projects, and it's a higher risk phenomenon. So anyway, what else? I guess I'm going to put some more photos. I showed a few drone photos there of the built facility. And now I've got some photos from the ground where you'll see the ballasted racking. This is fixed tilt ballasted racking. Ballast blocks are just big concrete blocks that the ballast is anchored in, and then those are sitting on piles of gravel that have been laid to, as a foundation so that the blocks don't sink into the landfill cap. You don't want to damage the landfill cap. There's a lot of, engineering that has to go into this, but it is doable and the result is good. I would like to shine a light, Scott, on your project in particular. From the outset, the intention was a LMI project, or was that something that emerged later on?
That emerged. So there's a lot of things we didn't know when we first wrote this request for qualifications. And the primary thing we didn't know was, do we have a property that is commercially viable when you compare it to a flat farm field that has no environmental liabilities, has no monitoring on it, no garbage underneath? We didn't know. We didn't know if we would just be outcompeted with all the other farm fields. So that's one thing we learned. We do have a viable site. So other things that we learned, we knew that we wanted to ballast the solar panels, as you see in the photos. We didn't want penetrations through our clay cap. that sheds water off of our landfill rather than letting rainwater go in and intermix with the garbage. We knew we wanted it ballast, so we asked for that specifically. We weren't sure about ballasting, about what we were going to do with the fence. All these projects are fenced in. We told the developer, look, you can have some shallow ground penetrations with the fencing. But then when they came to build the project, they actually ballasted the fencing too. So that's something we learned, that ballasting the perimeter fence is also viable in terms of cost benefit for the developer. Other things that we weren't sure about, that was a time when developers, especially in Minnesota and then later other places, were starting to use a pollinator seed mix to grow pollinator supported plants underneath the panels. We didn't know, is this a surplus cost, an excess cost that developers can't bear? Is this something they can bear in our market? And so we didn't ask for that. We kind of hinted around that would be nice, but we didn't require it. And in the end, they came in and they did just a standard kind of DOT grass mix under the panels, but did some pollinator mix around the edges. And so, that's growing our confidence that this is something that developers in this area have experience with and is not too much extra cost that's going to kill a project. So that's all really interesting things to learn as we develop these projects.
Now, the project has been built for a few years. When was it energized anyway?
I just looked at this the other day. It's in my
maybe?
talk. It was, I think it was almost 4 years from when we started. So it's been operating about 2 years. But it was a really long development timeline, and that just seems like forever for a lot of people who don't do long-term projects like myself.
Yeah.
I'm really on an annual, year-to-year basis for most of what I'm doing. So that was really.
What is the developer doing for vegetation maintenance?
So they hire a vendor, and they come in a couple times a year and get in there and mow. You can see in some of the pictures there that the wiring is suspended in some racking, so it's not laying on the ground. But it's not easy. It's probably a high labor thing. You can't just run a big lawnmower through there because of all the equipment and wires that you have to work around. But that's one of the benefits. I mean, there's stacking of benefits in this project. So one, we're expanding clean renewable energy. Two, it's a low-income community solar array, and we didn't plan for that. We left it really open. We were just like, make a project that's solar, and they ended up going for the low-income community solar incentive. So two, we're expanding access to community solar to more households. Three, the city's getting lease revenue out of this property that we were just mowing the lawn on. Four, we don't have to mow the lawn on everything inside the fence row. That's their leasehold. We don't want to be near their equipment. They don't want to be near our equipment. And then five, this property is now no longer a nonprofit government use. It's a leasehold for a for-profit enterprise. So now that property's back on the tax rolls. The operator pays the taxes. So we're getting paid twice, reducing maintenance, expanding renewable energy for low-income households. So it just stacks a ton of benefits.
Indeed. That's what we love about solar. It's good for reducing our carbon footprint. It's good for reducing air pollution. And it's great for reducing people's cost of energy, ultimately. So, photons are free. You have to build the solar array to collect those photons, but once that's done, the fuel for the solar array is free.
One of the things I really like to share, and I say, don't worry about knowing everything. Write questions in your RFP, RFQ, and learn. One thing that I like to share with property owners who are moving into this to get right on the first try is to take care of where they locate the inverters. The inverters have fans that have a constant hum because they're cooling electrical equipment. One of the benefits I had was in developing this project, I had that support of one of the city planners who does, planning, zoning, permitting, Marcus Ritchie. And we were talking about different issues, and the noise of the inverters came up. I said, that's a great idea. Let's move those to the interior of the project. Now, an engineer working on a computer in a different state is going to put those inverters close to the gate, close to the front door, whatever, to make it convenient for the electrician coming in to do service. But we didn't want that because that's going to put it near, our retail facility, the landscape recycling center. It's going to put it near our shop where our landscape recycling center folks are working on equipment. We wanted to push those into the interior of the project. So by the time anybody got close to the exterior of the project, they couldn't hear those inverters hum. You had to go all the way in.
Yeah, the noise from inverters is really trivial compared to the background noise of dogs and sirens and wind.
Yeah.
So, and of course, that's only during the daytime, right? The inverters
it's
are not working
hard.
at night, and so there's absolutely no disturbance. Even if you were just a couple 100 feet from an inverter, it would not be a big deal.
It's not much. The level is less than a car passing you at 45 miles per hour, the tire noise.
Exactly.
But if you have the opportunity to work with the design engineers on where those go, put them on the interior of the project.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly, they did use central inverters on this project. You don't see central inverters a lot in community scale solar, but that's what they did here. So what else should our listeners know about this project and your perspective, I guess, on brownfield solar in general? And in case you listeners are wondering, would he do it again? The answer is yes, because you have yet another project that you are in the process of developing. I mean, I don't know if you call it two-phase, but there were two parts to the original project, two 2-megawatt projects, basically, right? And now you're doing yet a third project. Why are you doing that? Why wasn't it all done at once?
So what we've done at every phase is we write an RFQ and we publish a map in that request for qualifications that says, here's the area that's available. And we basically draw a line around everything on our closed landfill that we're not using. And the developers come in and they say, well, we just want to do this part. And so we move forward, we give them a lease on that part, and then there's a balance of land left. Well, I still don't have anything to do with that land except mow the lawn. So we just, dust off that request for qualifications, republish it with the new area that's still that balance of land that's left over on our closed landfill, and sign up another developer. So that's what we've done, and we're in a lease option phase right now. Our developer is out there putting together a project, financing off-takers, and most importantly, waiting on incentives from the state. They're pursuing a market rate community solar array. That's the incentive they're going for with the state. So we're running that process again.
Yep. And so you have received bids and you're in the process of selecting a winner. Is that what's going on?
No, we already we've selected Total. We're working with Total.
Okay.
And Total Renewables, they're the renewable section, and they're in a lease option already. And so the lease option, the purpose is, one, they need site control to be able to apply for the incentives. So it's a temporary, 2-year lease, and that gives them an option to convert into a bigger, more thorough long-term lease later on. And the other purpose is they're paying a very, very trivial amount of money to have site control. The point isn't to make money on the lease option. The point is that it's just enough obligation to make sure that they're staying interested in moving forward on that project. And of course, we've got great developer partners, and they're always working on moving these projects forward. A lot of the the waiting is really waiting on the state incentives. There's a lot of competition for those incentives. Timelines are long. You asked what people should be, thinking about. If you're a property owner, just be prepared that if you don't hear from your developer for stretches of time, it's not because they've lost interest. Usually it's just they're waiting on the next phase with the state incentives.
Right.
It is very much a hurry up and wait game. As soon as the new round of incentives get published, I want to get my RFQ and vendor selected immediately so that they can get in whatever the queues are, whatever the lines are right away, so that we can have the best chance of getting our project built but that also means that I'm waiting a long time. I mean, the first one was 4 years. I'm hoping we can cut that development time on this one. I'm not in control of that development timeline. The developer doesn't control everything in that development timeline. Paying for an interconnection study is another part of the piece of the puzzle that the developer will do. That takes time and money. But my suspicion is that the state incentives are really the big drawn out timeline.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, it's a variety of things, but certainly getting the incentives is vital. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. This project, the original project, Solar Star, I believe it's called, was developed initially by SunPower, and then that was transferred to Nexamp, who's the long-term asset owner. Talk a little bit about that experience, because that's also, I think, something that people don't quite understand. There are different types of developers. Some developers will also oversee construction. Some developers will also be long-term asset owners, but many are just developed to a certain stage and then they flip it to somebody else.
Correct. So SunPower, which later on became Total Renewables, at the time we started working with SunPower, they were majority owned by Total, but kind of operating independently. And then their commercial and industrial business was brought into Total more formally and rebranded Total Renewables. But we selected SunPower and worked through all these development phases that we've described. And at the point of bringing in financing, that's when SunPower brought in Nexamp. And SunPower remained, tangentially involved in the project long term, but Nexamp has really taken over the lion's share of the work. And this is something that that cities and municipalities should expect when they move into these deals. Cities like to retain control of the name of the company they're working with, but it is extremely common that one project, one name, one entity, one LLC develops a project, and then the project is at least moved into its own standalone LLC. So these projects both have their own standalone LLCs, and then those LLCs are owned, invested in by Nexamp. So this is very common, and you want to have an understanding that that's going to be likely, and have a way of managing that in your long-term lease contracts. And these are things that your city attorney is familiar with, but as long as everyone understands that this is typical of this business, I think they'll be able to work that out in their lease contracts.
I dug up the slides that you sent me. So here's a nice aerial of the 5.3 megawatts. That's 40 acres approximately. And then this new phase that you're doing, which is 10 acres and I don't know, said how many acres?
Yeah.
10 acres?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The part on the south, which in this angle would be to the left of that circled area, is exactly 10 acres. Okay. And then there's sort of some scraps to the north of that. Yeah. So it's got trees on it, and I'd love for a solar developer to lease that portion, because it really shouldn't have trees on it, and they'll remove those. But I think our developer Total is really focused on that area to the left, which is to the south, and that's a closed landfill cell. It's got elevation, but much of it is actually sloped to the south, so that's not bad.
Yeah.
And this site is, you can kind of see it's located on a closed landfill next to a wastewater treatment plant, next to a bumper factory, next to a landscape recycling facility, next to an interstate. So there's a lot of adjacent uses that are not going to be harmed. There's some residential to the south of us, you can see,
Yep.
but there's a tree line there, and they're not really affected by the development.
Yeah, they're not even going to know it's there really with those trees.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see the solar project at the wastewater treatment facility here at the top of the screen. There's a approximately 1 megawatt, I believe, with the UCSD. It's called Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, which is fueling a green hydrogen bus project. Or at least that's the original intent. I don't know if that project is still going.
Yeah, I think that's how it works, which is across the street to the south.
Yeah, yeah. The last I heard about that, they were having some problems charging the hydrogen buses, but that's all I know. But good project, good, interesting pilot for green hydrogen right here in little old Champaign, Urbana. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else? This is wonderful, great overview of the Urbana solar project, which is giving low and middle income residents a 50% discount off the cost of their power, those who choose to subscribe. And, subscribing in a community solar array is a bit of a lift for consumers. You're taking on an additional bill, but you're getting credit on your Ameren bill, your regular power bill, and then paying less for those kWh that you're buying. And so it is a win-win, but it's not easy to get consumers to buy these contracts per se. Well, I say it's not easy, but in general, solar developers are getting all of their projects subscribed. So there's plenty of demand. I mean, if you can reduce your power bill by or your supply charges by 50%, that's wonderful, right? Every consumer would want to do that, frankly, if they knew about it.
There's two barriers that I see to getting subscribers to low-income community solar in Illinois. One is it sounds too good to be true, and two is there is a ton of consumer protections that just create paperwork and bureaucracy. Those are both good things, though, in a certain sense. But if consumers can see through that, the benefits are huge. So as you mentioned, it's 50% cost of electricity. You income qualify once ever in the course of your subscription. And if your income rises, you don't get kicked out. The subscription is portable to any address within your utility district. So if you're in Ameren, you can move your subscription to anywhere within Ameren. And there's no sign-up fee and there's no cancellation fee. So it really does sound too good to be true. And communicating, with some trust that this is the real deal is a real challenge. But for folks who sign up, they're really enjoying some significant savings on their bill.
In our last few minutes together, Scott, tell us about Solar Urbana-Champaign. You're involved with a group buy program that you've been running for the last several years. What is that, and how does that benefit consumers?
Yeah, this is I think it's our eighth year of our bulk solar purchase program, Solar Urbana-Champaign. We partner with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association on that. It's what a lot of places call Solarize. What we do is we competitively select a single solar installer for a limited time program. We put them on bulk and declining block pricing. And then we do a bunch of community education and lead development called Solar Power Hours. And we bring this selected solar installer more volume. In exchange, they bring our program participants bulk and declining block pricing. Bulk meaning they know that we're going to bring them a lot of leads and educated leads. They don't have to do all the education and be on the phone all the time. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring them educated leads. They give us better pricing. And then throughout the program period, which is about 9 months, as we expand the actual signed contract capacity, the prices decline for the consumers at predetermined blocks. So if we have 100 kW sold, price goes down. 250 kW sold, the price goes down. And it goes down for everybody. So if you're the first person that signed up, you already paid for your solar installation, you're going to get a rebate check at the end of the program if we hit those price declines, those sales volume.
That's very cool.
And that means the first person signing up isn't just done. They're out talking to their friends because they want a rebate check. They want to hit those declines. And then what we did 3 years ago is we took that exact same program model, which people have been doing all over the country for years, and we added a new technology to it. We added ground source heat pumps, or geothermal, and we created geothermal Urbana-Champaign. We're doing the exact same thing. Bulk and declining block pricing, single vetted selected installer, community education. And we're making huge gains in geothermal here, which is a lot harder because this is a thing people don't even know about. They don't even understand what a heat pump is, or that they already have a heat pump in their kitchen. It's their refrigerator. That's a heat pump.
Yep. So can you give us a quick summary of the last program year? How did that play out? How many KW or how many households bought into the program? And what is your estimation of the discount that consumers are achieving by participating?
Yeah. So I think we had something like 40 installations last year. And we're down, from the beginning of this program, when solar, residential solar, rooftop, small business was, $4 a watt or more. We are getting base prices at $3 a watt. And the actual installed, after the ancillary equipment and, particularities of an install, we're still at $3.15, $3.30 a watt in most years. So we are achieving significant savings for residents. But really, that's not even the biggest part of our program. The biggest part of our program is peace of mind. People can go get 3 quotes. They know they can go get 3 quotes, but they look a little bit different and they don't understand all the language. That's exactly what we teach people in our solar power hours. So we're teaching them to be more savvy purchasers of solar energy systems, even if they go out and get their own quote and hire a different vendor. But then we're also competitively selecting a vendor. That whole go get 3 quotes from a roofer or whatever the thing is, we're doing that for them on the solar side and providing a qualified, vetted vendor that has a master services contract with MREA, our program partner. So there's 2 kinds of certainty that we're giving people, and that's really taking a lot of people off the fence. They're on the fence about getting a solar array, but we want them to get off the fence and actually sign a contract. And removing those uncertainty barriers is really huge for our program.
Yeah, I think that is just an awesome program. And if you don't know about it, just check it out. Just Google Solar Urbana-Champaign. And in your city, just do a little homework. Here in the Midwest, we have the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, which is driving these across the Midwest. But East Coast, West Coast, there are parallel universes, and you can find these programs. And I do think you're spot on that it gives the consumer peace of mind and savings. But you know that you're getting a qualified vendor. The solar industry is a very fast-growing industry. Companies are coming and going, and it's good, bad, ugly. So you just don't want to. I mean, this is a long-term upgrade that you're making to your facility, to your home, or your business, and you don't want to mess around. So, well, thank you so much, Scott Tess, Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the City of Urbana. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review if you would. If you value this content, give us a rating on Apple or Spotify. That is one of the best things you can do. The very best thing you can do is tell a friend about the show. So please refer a friend to the show and reach out to me on LinkedIn or at cleanpowerhour.com. I love hearing from my listeners. With that, Scott, how can our listeners find you?
Yeah, you can find more about our bulk solar purchase program at solarurbanachampaign.com, geothermal purchase program, geothermaluc.org. And I'm on LinkedIn, the city website, if you want to give me a call and talk about how you can get a solar array on your closed landfill. I would love to see that project in your community.
I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Thanks so much. Hey, listeners. This is Tim. I want to give a shout out to all of you. I do this for you twice a week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. I really appreciate you and what you're all about. You are part and parcel of the energy transition, whether you're an energy professional today or an aspiring energy professional. So thank you. I want to let you know that the Clean Power Hour has launched a listener survey, and it would mean so much to me if you would go to cleanpowerhour.com, click on the About Us link right there on the main navigation. That takes you to the About page, and you'll see a big graphic, Listener Survey. Just click on that graphic, and it takes just a couple of minutes. If you fill out the survey, I will send you a lovely baseball cap with our logo on it. The other thing I want our listeners to know is that this podcast is made possible by corporate sponsors. We have Chin Power Systems, the leading three-phase string inverter manufacturer in North America. So check out CPS America. But we are very actively looking for additional support to make this show work. And you see here our media kit with all the sponsor benefits and statistics about the show. You know, we're dropping 2 episodes a week. We have now over 320,000 downloads on YouTube, and we're getting about 45,000 downloads per month. So this is a great way to bring your brand to our listeners, and our listeners are decision makers in clean energy. This includes project executives, engineers, finance, project management, and many other professionals who are making decisions about and developing, designing, installing, and making possible clean energy projects. So check out cleanpowerhour.com, both our listener survey on the About Us and our media kit, and become a sponsor today. Thank you so much. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chinpowersystems.com to find out more.